Failure is not something we should fear or run from. It is something we should embrace. It is not an enemy, it is a mentor, a teacher, a vital part of the human experience. We are all imperfect beings, and in that imperfection there is growth. It's easy to feel defeated when things don't go as planned, but what if we viewed failure as the doorway to success instead of a dead end? What if we dared to step through, not with the intent to avoid pain or discomfort, but with the purpose of learning and evolving? Failure is often viewed as something to avoid at all costs, something that reflects inadequacy or personal defeat. However, in reality, failure is an essential part of the human experience, a vital component of growth. Rather than seeing failure as something to fear, we should embrace it as an opportunity to learn, adapt, and improve. When we reframe our understanding of failure, it becomes not a symbol of limitation, but a powerful tool for transformation. To begin, it's crucial to understand that failure is not the end of the road. It's simply a part of the journey. Every great success story includes moments of failure, moments of missteps, mistakes, and setbacks. The difference between those who succeed and those who give up is how they respond to these failures. The key is not to avoid failure, but to approach it with a mindset that values it as an opportunity to learn. When we fail, we are confronted with a moment of truth. We must ask ourselves what went wrong. Where did we miss the mark? Failure forces us to confront our choices, our actions, and sometimes even our beliefs about what is possible. In doing so, we open ourselves up to introspection, self-awareness, and growth. It's in these moments of self-reflection that we learn the most about ourselves and the world around us. Failure strips away the distractions and the comforts, leaving us with a raw and honest evaluation of what needs to change. Often, when we face failure, the instinct is to withdraw. We want to protect ourselves from the feelings of inadequacy, disappointment, and frustration that accompany it. But retreating in the face of failure only prevents us from gaining the lessons we need. Instead of running away from failure, we should lean into it. This doesn't mean we should seek out failure or enjoy the discomfort it brings, but we should recognize that failure is an inevitable part of any worthwhile pursuit. Rather than seeing it as something that defines us, we can view it as a stepping stone, a necessary challenge that helps us build the skills, insights, and resilience needed for success. The idea that failure is a necessary part of success may sound counterintuitive. After all, in a culture that prizes achievement and perfection, failure is often seen as something to avoid at all costs. But think about the times in your life when you've grown the most. Was it during times of easy success, or was it in moments of struggle and failure? If we take a closer look, we'll find that our most transformative experiences often come from the times we've had to push through adversity. Whether it's in our personal lives or our careers, the most meaningful progress is often born from setbacks. Take the example of an athlete training for a major competition. They don't get to the top by avoiding failure, they get there by failing and learning from each misstep. Every loss, every injury, every difficult practice session becomes a lesson in perseverance, strength, and strategy. The athlete doesn't let failure define them. Instead, they use each experience to fine-tune their approach, adjust their mindset, and ultimately improve their performance. In fact, failure is what enables them to get better. Without those setbacks, they would never reach their true potential. The same is true for anyone pursuing a meaningful goal or dream. Whether you are starting a business, learning a new skill, or striving to improve in any area of life, failure is an inevitable part of the process. And yet, it is through failure that we gain the most important insights. Failure teaches us what works and what doesn't, what's worth pursuing and what needs to be abandoned. It teaches us humility, patience, and persistence. It reminds us that success is not linear, but a winding road filled with twists, turns, and unexpected detours. Furthermore, failure allows us to develop resilience. Resilience is not built by avoiding challenges, it is forged through facing them head-on. Every time we fail and rise again, we become more capable of handling future obstacles. It's through failure that we develop the mental and emotional toughness needed to endure hardship. When we learn to face failure with a sense of grace and acceptance, we create the foundation for long-term success. We become less afraid of failure and more willing to take risks, knowing that each setback is simply an opportunity to grow. It's also important to recognize that failure often presents us with new perspectives. When things don't go according to plan, we are forced to step back and reevaluate our approach. We may discover new paths, creative solutions, or hidden opportunities that we might have missed if everything had gone smoothly. Failure helps us think outside the box and challenges our assumptions. It shakes us out of complacency and pushes us to explore different possibilities. If we only ever succeeded, we would never have the chance to rethink, reimagine, or innovate. When we accept failure as a natural part of the process, we begin to realize that it's not something to be feared, but something to be understood. Failure offers you as clarity. It tells us where we need to improve, what areas require more effort, and where we might need to change direction. Each failure is an invitation to do better, be better, and think better. Without failure, we wouldn't have the feedback we need to make informed decisions and progress. Additionally, learning to fail with grace allows us to maintain a sense of perspective. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that failure is a personal reflection of our abilities or worth. But the truth is that failure is not about who we are, it's about what we do. It's an external event, not an internal identity. By separating our sense of self from the failures we experience, we can approach them with less emotional charge and more objectivity. We can take a step back, analyze the situation, and figure out what needs to change without getting bogged down in self-criticism or shame. Ultimately, the fear of failure is rooted in the misconception that failure means we are not good enough. But the reality is that failure is an essential part of growth and progress. Every successful person has failed countless times before achieving their goals. Failure is not a sign of weakness or inadequacy, it's a testament to the willingness to take risks, try new things, and learn from experience. It's an integral part of the process that ultimately leads to success. By embracing failure, we open ourselves up to the full spectrum of the human experience. We allow ourselves the space to grow, to learn, and to evolve. Failure doesn't have to be feared. It can be celebrated as a vital part of the journey. Each time we fail, we are given the opportunity to rise again, stronger and wiser, and in doing so, we move closer to becoming the people we are meant to be. Failure is not the opposite of success, it is an essential part of achieving it. When we experience failure, there is often a deep emotional response: disappointment, frustration, anger, or even sadness. These emotions are valid, and they are a natural part of the human experience. Rather than suppressing these feelings, it's essential to allow ourselves to feel the pain of failure fully. In doing so, we give ourselves the space to process, heal, and ultimately grow from the experience. Often the instinct is to avoid the discomfort, to push it aside and move forward quickly. However, ignoring the pain of failure can prevent us from fully learning from it, and it can delay the healing and growth that we need to move forward. When we fail, there's a temptation to escape the discomfort. It's easy to go into denial, to minimize the significance of the failure, or to numb ourselves in various ways. But these reactions, though protective in the moment, ultimately prevent us from gaining the lessons that failure has to offer. Acknowledging the pain allows us to fully understand the impact of what has happened. It's a necessary step in the process of learning and evolving. The first step in fully feeling the pain is to allow ourselves to be present with the discomfort. It's important not to rush through the experience. Take the time to reflect on what the failure means to you personally. How does it affect your goals, your sense of self, or your confidence? What emotions arise as you sit with the reality of it? These feelings, no matter how difficult, are essential to processing the experience in a healthy way. By allowing yourself to feel, you give yourself permission to experience your humanity fully. You validate your emotions and remind yourself that it is okay to feel hurt or disappointed when things don't go as planned. Sometimes when we fail, there is a deep sense of shame or guilt that accompanies the experience. We may feel as though we have let ourselves down or disappointed others. This can create a barrier to moving forward as we become stuck in self-judgment. However, feeling shame or guilt doesn't serve us in the long run. What's more helpful is to allow ourselves the space to feel, but without attaching those feelings to our identity. You are not your failures. They do not define who you are or your worth. By acknowledging the pain and sitting with it without judgment, you begin to separate your identity from the experience. This is essential for self-compassion, as it allows you to forgive yourself and let go of the negative emotions that might otherwise keep you trapped in a cycle of self-doubt. As you sit with the pain of failure, it's important to practice self-compassion. Be gentle with yourself. Just as you would comfort a friend who has experienced a setback, offer the same kindness to yourself. Failure is a part of life, and it does not diminish your value. It simply provides an opportunity to reflect, grow, and ultimately do better next time. Self-compassion is not about excusing mistakes, but about understanding that we are all imperfect and that it's okay to stumble along the way. Through allowing ourselves to feel the pain of failure, we create space for growth. The pain is not something to avoid, but something to be embraced as a necessary part of the process. By sitting with our emotions, processing them, and approaching them with compassion, we transform failure from a negative experience into a valuable lesson. We learn not only from what went wrong, but from how we handle the emotions that come with failure. This emotional resilience ultimately makes us stronger and more capable of handling future challenges. Vulnerability is often misunderstood as a weakness, especially in a world that emphasizes strength, self-reliance, and invulnerability. However, vulnerability is one of the most powerful attributes a person can cultivate. It is the courage to be open, to show up as your true self, and to take risks even when the outcome is uncertain. In the context of failure, vulnerability becomes even more important. When we fail, it can be easy to hide our mistakes, to put on a facade of strength, and to avoid admitting our shortcomings. But it's in these very moments of vulnerability that we open ourselves to learning, growth, and connection. To begin, vulnerability requires us to let go of the need for perfection. The pressure to appear flawless often prevents us from showing our true selves. We become conditioned to believe that our worth is tied to our achievements and successes. In this mindset, failure is seen as a reflection of our inadequacy. We are afraid to fail because it feels like an exposure of our imperfections, something that will make us appear weak or unworthy. Yet, vulnerability calls for us to embrace those imperfections, to acknowledge that we are human and that failure is a natural part of the process. Rather than hiding our mistakes, vulnerability allows us to own them. It gives us permission to say, I messed up, but I'm learning from this, and I'm willing to grow. One of the core aspects of vulnerability is the willingness to ask for help. When we fail, it's easy to isolate ourselves. We may feel ashamed, embarrassed, or defeated, and as a result, we shut ourselves off from others. However, vulnerability invites us to reach out and ask for support. This can be one of the most difficult things to do, as it requires us to admit that we don't have all the answers, that we need others. But this is where the true power of vulnerability lies. By asking for help, we not only gain new insights and perspectives, but we also create opportunities for connection and collaboration. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we create a space for others to do the same. It fosters a sense of mutual understanding and solidarity, reminding us that we are not alone in our struggles. We are all human, and we all face challenges. Vulnerability also means being open to feedback. In the wake of failure, it's easy to become defensive, to justify our actions or to protect our ego. Yet true growth comes from the ability to hear and absorb feedback without taking it personally. When we are vulnerable, we are able to accept constructive criticism with humility. We don't see feedback as an attack, but as a valuable tool that helps us improve. Vulnerability allows us to listen with an open heart, to consider different viewpoints, and to make the necessary changes in our approach. This openness is what leads to growth as we adapt and refine our strategies in response to the lessons learned from failure. Another critical aspect of vulnerability is the courage to try again, even when the outcome is uncertain. Failure can be paralyzing, especially when we are confronted with the risk of additional failure. It's tempting to retreat, to play it safe, and to avoid putting ourselves in a position where we might fail again. But vulnerability challenges us to take that next step, to put ourselves out there despite the fear. It requires the strength to continue moving forward, knowing that failure is not a reflection of our worth, but a stepping stone on the path to success. The willingness to try again, to embrace the uncertainty, and to keep moving forward is what separates those who give up from those who ultimately succeed. In the face of failure, vulnerability is also about accepting that we don't have control over every outcome. We can put in the effort, plan, and work hard, but sometimes the results are beyond our influence. This reality can be difficult to accept, as we are conditioned to believe that success is a direct result of our efforts. Yet vulnerability allows us to release the need for control, to acknowledge that we can only do our best and trust that the outcome will unfold as it will. This shift in mindset enables us to take risks without the constant fear of failure looming over us. We can give ourselves permission to embrace the unknown and the unpredictable, trusting that even if things don't go as planned, we will still learn and grow from the experience. Vulnerability also deepens our connection with others. When we fail, we often feel isolated, thinking that our mistakes set us apart from those who seem to have it all together. But in reality, vulnerability fosters empathy and understanding. When we are open about our failures, others feel encouraged to share their own struggles. This mutual sharing creates bonds, strengthens relationships, and reminds us that we are not alone in our experiences. Through vulnerability, we break down the barriers that separate us and create a space for authentic connection. The willingness to show up as our true selves, flawed, imperfect, and human, opens the door for others to do the same. It is through these shared experiences of vulnerability that we find support, encouragement, and solidarity. Additionally, vulnerability enables us to redefine our relationship with failure. Instead of viewing failure as something to be avoided or ashamed of, we can begin to see it as a necessary part of the process. Failure is not an indication of our inadequacy, it is an opportunity for growth. When we embrace vulnerability, we allow ourselves to view failure not as a setback, but as a lesson. It is through vulnerability that we come to understand that the mistakes we make along the way are not obstacles to success, they are the building blocks of success. Every failure is a chance to refine our skills, adjust our strategies, and become better equipped for the challenges ahead. Moreover, vulnerability allows us to be kind to ourselves in the face of failure. Instead of berating ourselves for our shortcomings, we can approach ourselves with compassion. We recognize that failure is not a reflection of our worth, but simply a part of the human experience. Through vulnerability, we offer ourselves the grace to make mistakes and the understanding that it's okay to stumble along the way. This self-compassion gives us the strength to continue moving forward, to keep trying even when things don't go as planned. In embracing vulnerability, we also embrace our full range of emotions. We allow ourselves to feel the disappointment, frustration, and fear that accompany failure, but we do so without letting those emotions define us. Vulnerability teaches us that it's okay to feel vulnerable, to experience uncertainty, and to face the unknown. It reminds us that failure is not something to be ashamed of, it is a part of the journey, and it's through embracing vulnerability that we unlock the power to learn, grow, and ultimately succeed. Vulnerability is the key that allows us to unlock our full potential, to embrace failure, and to move forward with courage and resilience. It is not a weakness, but a profound strength. When failure strikes, it's all too easy to fall into the trap of self-criticism. We become our own harshest judges, replaying every misstep, every decision that could have been better, and every moment where we felt we could have done more. This inner critic becomes louder in times of failure, feeding off our doubts and insecurities. However, this cycle of negative self-talk does nothing to help us grow or improve. Instead, it only prolongs the pain of failure and prevents us from moving forward. The key to turning failure into success is to practice self-compassion, to speak to ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we would offer a friend in a similar situation. Self-compassion begins with treating ourselves with the same care and empathy that we would extend to others. When a friend experiences a setback, we don't berate them or tell them they're not good enough. We offer them support, encouragement, and a reminder that they are worthy of love and understanding, regardless of the outcome. Yet when we fail, we often do the exact opposite. We punish ourselves, dwelling on our mistakes and telling ourselves that we should have known better or done better. This self-criticism only deepens the pain of failure and makes it harder to see the lessons it offers. To practice self-compassion, we must first recognize that failure is a universal experience. No one is immune to it. Every person, no matter how successful they may seem, has faced moments of defeat, struggle, and disappointment. Failure does not make us less worthy or less capable, it simply means we are human. Acknowledging this fact allows us to release the unrealistic expectations we place on ourselves to be perfect or flawless. We are not failures because we make mistakes. We are human, and mistakes are an inevitable part of life. Once we recognize the universality of failure, we can start to change the way we respond to our own setbacks. Instead of using failure as an opportunity to tear ourselves down, we can use it as a chance to show ourselves kindness. When you feel the urge to criticize yourself, pause and ask yourself, would I speak to a friend this way? Would I tell them that they are not good enough? Or would I remind them that they are doing the best they can and that it's okay to stumble along the way? In moments of failure, we need to be gentle with ourselves, to offer ourselves the same encouragement and support we would give to anyone we care about. Self-compassion also involves recognizing that failure does not define us. Our worth is not determined by our successes or our failures. We are valuable simply because we exist. When we practice self-compassion, we separate our identity from our mistakes. A failure is an event, not a reflection of who we are as people. By reminding ourselves of this truth, we can let go of the shame and guilt that often accompany failure. We are not failures because we failed. We are people learning, growing, and evolving. Another important aspect of self-compassion is the ability to forgive ourselves. We are often our own harshest critics, holding on to mistakes long after they have passed. We replay our failures in our minds, telling ourselves that we could have done things differently. However, holding on to this self-blame only prevents us from healing. To move forward, we must learn to forgive ourselves for the mistakes we've made. Forgiveness doesn't mean excusing our actions, it means accepting that we are human, that we make mistakes, and that those mistakes do not diminish our worth. When we forgive ourselves, we free ourselves from the burden of regret and open the door to growth and healing. Finally, practicing self-compassion means taking care of ourselves during difficult times. Failure can take an emotional toll, and it's important to prioritize our well-being when we are feeling down. This might mean taking time to rest, seeking support from loved ones, or engaging in activities that bring us comfort and joy. By caring for ourselves, we create the space we need to process our emotions, learn from our experiences, and ultimately move forward with greater strength and resilience. When we approach failure with self-compassion, we transform it from something to be feared into something that can fuel our growth. We create a foundation of kindness and understanding that allows us to learn from our mistakes without being weighed down by shame or guilt. Self-compassion helps us embrace failure as a part of the journey rather than an obstacle to overcome. With this mindset, we can navigate the challenges of life with greater resilience and a deeper sense of self-worth.